Joining us now is terrorism and Mideast expert Dr. Walid Phares. He is an advisor to the Anti-Terrorism Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives and a Newsmax contributor. He is also the author of The Confrontation: Winning the War Against Future Jihad. Welcome to Newsmax TV, Dr. Phares.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, Newsmax's own Ron Kessler says that intelligence officials are preparing to issue new al-Qaida terror warnings. Is that in line with what you're hearing, and what should Americans be fearing at this point?
Well, the most important point is that al-Qaida International itself has issued statements threatening of strikes and calling on all their supporters. And we know that they do have supporters not just on the outside of the United States and remote places like Yemen, Somalia, and other locations in the Middle East, but also within the United States.
Now, Defense Secretary Robert Gates says that the operation that killed Osama bin Laden could be a game changer in the war in Afghanistan. Meantime, a new poll finds that 56% of Americans want troops home from Afghanistan within a year. Is it time for us to pull out of Afghanistan, as some say?
Let's look at the immediate result of an abrupt pullout of the U.S. and NATO forces from Afghanistan, and I underline, without having an alternative on the ground, without having defeated the Taliban. It is very simple. It's the return of the Taliban from a variety of places inside Afghanistan with support from the Taliban within Pakistan to Kabul. And that means the establishment of a Taliban-controlled regime in Kabul, the retransformation of Afghanistan into a jihadi state as it was exactly 10 years ago. Are we going to give them that gift?
You believe American troops should remain there indefinitely?
I believe that American troops have been sacrificing, and taxpayers in America have been sacrificing, so were other members of NATO, so that a space was open in Afghanistan for a change. What has happened is that while the military were giving us all these gifts and sacrifices, the political levels, including the strategists of the administration, were not able to establish the alternative. And the alternative is not just a government in Afghanistan, but a civil society. While the Middle East is revolting with its civil society, we have not actually supported civil society in the way that they will be the deterrent to the Taliban, not just our armed forces.
Is al-Qaida still a formidable force, even without bin Laden? And who's in line to take his place?
What we need to do is to understand the mindset of the jihadists. These are not the mafia. These are not labor union. These are not our, democratic political parties here. This is an ideological network, and the ideological network, I liken it basically to the Lord of the Rings. Yes, the Lord is very important. The emir, the caliph, the chief of all these networks is important, but he's not the maker of these networks. Osama bin Laden was created by the jihadist movement. He did not create the jihadist movement. So while this is a very important benchmark, the elimination of bin Laden is an important benchmark in the process of defeating al-Qaeda and the Taliban and the jihadists. What would really defeat them is basically create an alternative to them. And the alternative to them should be the armed forces of Afghanistan in that case, and the civil society of Afghanistan. And in both levels, unfortunately, we haven't been able to achieve much.
Now, President Obama on CBS's 60 Minutes said that bin Laden must have had some kind of support to survive undetected under the noses of Pakistan's military. And Pakistan claims it'll now investigate. But what is the real story, as you know it, on Pakistan's involvement with hiding bin Laden, or if it's the case, even colluding with bin Laden and al-Qaeda?
The argument that says that for bin Laden to remain that free for that long, in that wide of a space, which is his bunker or his location, it makes sense to think that he had not just acknowledgement and people knew where he was actually shielded. You cannot be in an area like this, in an open air, and people coming to see you and couriers back and forth in a government that has a very solid national security agency, intelligence service, without some level. I do argue that while it is possible that the president of Pakistan, the cabinet of Pakistan, who are coming from a party which has been targeted by al-Qaeda, Benazir Bhutto was assassinated by the Taliban. Many members of this government, including, last year, have been killed by the Pakistani jihadists. So while the government may not have known exactly the location, they knew that bin Laden was inside their country. it is now logical that a circle, a segment within the national security, within the intelligence service, in this case the ISI, must have known, and some among them must have been the case officers protecting the presence of bin Laden.
Now, author Salman Rushdie last week came out saying that Pakistan should be declared a terrorist state. Others have echoed that sentiment. Do you agree? And is it in the best interest of U.S. national security to suspend $1.3 billion in annual aid to Pakistan?
No, I don't think so. I think the correct definition is that they are jihadists, among them terrorists, who have great influences inside Pakistan, and not only in the northwestern frontier area, not only the Taliban who are at the borders, but they are, it seems now, this is evidence to it, that there are influences, which means that there are officials within the Pakistani apparatus that are of sympathies to the Taliban, to the jihadists, and they were responsible for the existence of bin Laden that long on Pakistani soil. But at the same time, Pakistan as a country, and even as this government, the People's Party government, are our allies, or at least are opposed to the Taliban, and as much as we are. So now the right thing to do is to tell the Pakistani government that we are sending you foreign aid, and there is something wrong within your institutions. If you want to receive that foreign aid, which we are happy to send it, you've got to reform your own intelligence service. That should be the equation that the administration and future administrations will have to engage in.
Now, what are the implications of bin Laden's assassination for Iran?
Well, Iran obviously is taking advantage of all the changes that are happening in the Middle East, as we can see clearly. They are getting ready for our departure from Iraq, and they would like to see an equation whereby Americans would believe that since bin Laden is gone, we need to move out from Afghanistan. And who would replace us in Afghanistan? Certainly the Taliban, and that would be good news for the Iranian regime. The less we are in the region, the less our allies are in the region, the more the regime in Iran can extend and expand its strategic influence. So the Iranians will see that the elimination of bin Laden without a replacement, without a new U.S. policy in Afghanistan and in Pakistan would be to their advantage.
Dr. Phares, last question real quickly. President Obama has received a lot of praise for the killing of Osama bin Laden. What do you think has been the biggest mistake the Obama administration has made throughout this whole ordeal?
It's the assessment that for a couple of years now that al-Qaida has been weakened, that bin Laden didn't have a control over al-Qaida. What we are discovering now from the documents is that al-Qaida was not really weakened, and that bin Laden had some sort of oversight in strategic assessment. So we need to look at how we analyze things for the future.
All right, Dr. Walid Phares, thanks so much. It's always great having you here on Newsmax TV.
Thank you for having me.